Hello and welcome to Awakening to Conscious Co-Creation with your host, Peter Tung. I always get a nice little kick of adrenaline energy when I hear that opening music. The intention in these episodes is to give you insights into how the planet is shifting in frequency and vibration to a new level of awareness and how you can be part of this grand awakening. And this grand awakening is upon us. It's happening right now. And I'm delighted to welcome to the show today Steve Bhaerman, who is going to be working with me in co-creation along with Dr. Leonard Laskow in a new 7-part teleseminar series that we are putting together. And Len was due to be on the show with us today so that you could experience the three of us interacting with each other on today's show. But unfortunately, Len is not feeling well and is unable to join us. So I know that Steve will make some comments about Len in a few moments, but we do want to send our love and best wishes to Len and his partner Sama for a speedy recovery. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so looking forward to the three of us, you and myself and Len, doing this teleseries, which is essentially about how to expand in times of contraction.
So let's talk a bit about what's going on in the world today, right now, and we appear to be beset by multiplying crises. Is there any good news hidden in all the bad news?
Well, as my partner in Spontaneous Evolution, the book I recently finished, Bruce Lipton, tells us, is that crisis precipitates evolution. So the more we see things that appear to be in crisis, that appear to be falling apart, you can bet that there's something that's simultaneously falling together. And we do have, I guess one would say, a perfect storm of crises. We've got the economic system. And as my cohort, the Swami, says, remember the good old days when people robbed banks? So we have the economic system, we have political strife, divisiveness, and anger. We have ecological crises. We've got climate change, burgeoning populations, and all of these things are pointing us to the dire necessity for a new organizing principle. And in evolution, when the density of a population reaches a certain point, there is always an up-leveling, an emergence of a new form that is more suited to the new situation. And as an example, imagine we are still living in a hunter-gatherer society, and every morning 8 million New Yorkers trudge up to Westchester County to forage for food. It's not workable. So we are now in a situation where the rules and institutions that we've been living by, we meaning our civilization, for the past long period of time, we're coming to an end of that because it simply is no longer able to hold our potential, and that's where the evolution comes in.
I guess we should just warn people, Steve, that occasionally the Swami will kick in with some words of cosmic wisdom along the way.
Oh, yes. Swami Bhayantananda will I guess the turban will come on. Swami is turban-powered, and he'll make his appearance sometime during this hour. Normally this time of year, he's fervently working on his annual State of the Universe address, so perhaps there'll be a couple of snippets from that in our hour together.
Oh, I'd love to hear about the Swami State of the Universe address later on. So back to the Spontaneous Evolution, and obviously you worked alongside Bruce Lipton in writing that book, and obviously what a great opportunity and gift that was. So what does the actual biology have to say about the future?
Well, again, Bruce, his background is as a cellular biologist, and Bruce's first book was called The Biology of Belief, and this really talked about how on the cellular level, the cell membrane is the mediator between what goes on inside the cell, that is the genetic material that's activated, and the various chemical processes, and what goes on outside the cell, the perceptions, the stimulation, and so on. And because of how we've been taught, because we live in this paradigm where the dominant belief is in scientific materialism, that really only the material world matters, and that the process of evolution is a purely material process, we tend to not really look at things that are right in front of us that can't be explained by the current scientific paradigm. So, as an example, we've learned that we are at the effect of our genetics, and yet, according to Bruce, only about 3% of all illness is genetic in nature. So, what about the rest of it? We've heard that certain diseases run in families, and that's also true of people who've been adopted into those families. So there's a lot more to it than we've learned. At the same time, we have the very, very interesting phenomena called the placebo effect, where just believing that a medicine is going to make you well or relieve your symptoms, even if the medicine is nothing more than sugar pills, in about 1/3 of the cases, believing that the medicine is enough. So we're really at the beginning stages of investigating these phenomena.
Absolutely. And it's remarkable, isn't it, to understand or begin to understand how powerful our beliefs are in guiding what actually happens to us physically.
And, and again, we've been so inundated, as they say, our beliefs are, we mistake our beliefs for reality. And because we're seeing through these eyes that have been trained to see things in a certain way, we tend to not notice so many of these other things, and we tend to dismiss these ancient spiritual and healing and meditative practices that have been successful for thousands of years, and assume that because we have studied things scientifically, quote unquote, we know more and we know better. And so I think that there's a balancing that's taking place, and that's one of the reasons why Bruce and I wrote Spontaneous Evolution, not to dismiss science, but rather to look at how science has actually disproved some of the fundamental dogmatic beliefs of scientific materialism, and pointing us in the direction of integrating what modern science knows and what ancient wisdom knows at the same time.
I'd love you just to tell us the story that you write about in the book about the imaginal cells coming forward.
Yeah, this is a really useful story to describe where we seem to be right now, and that is the story of how the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. And it's, the caterpillar is a very successful organism. It crawls along the ground, it eats, it's a very successful consumer. And I'm sure that while the caterpillar is thriving, everything is looking really good inside that system. But as this transformation begins to take place, there begins to be chaos as the caterpillar cells begin to deconstruct and fall apart. And there is this chaotic soup inside of the chrysalis. And at some point, these new cells, as you pointed out, they're called imaginal cells, as in imagination. These new cells begin to pop up. And at first, they're isolated, and there's very few of them, and so they're not able to establish. But at some point, these new cells, these imaginal cells, the first butterfly cells, begin to connect with one another. They begin to communicate. They begin to cohere together, and at some point, there is a critical mass, and the caterpillar falls apart, and these imaginal cells become the new butterfly organism. And what's very interesting about this is that the caterpillar and the butterfly have the exact same DNA. The difference is in the signal that they are receiving. So once again, Bruce is a pioneer in a science called epigenetics, that is above the genes. And so what's happening above the gene in the caterpillar is that there is a signal that is telling it that there is a new structure, a new order that it's being called forth. And now we as human beings are in this very interesting time where the old institutions based on obsolete ideas are falling apart like the caterpillar, and we are being called forth by the healthy central voice of this new organism called humanity, because as evolution progresses, there is always an increase in community and there's an increase in awareness. And the next phase of human evolution is not growing a bigger brain or growing an extra limb. It's recognizing that we're each and all cells in the new body of a superorganism called humanity. And this may not be the humanity that we know, which may better be called inhumanity, but this is really a heart-based understanding of who we really are. It's the connection in love, and that's really in our series what Leonard Laskow is going to be representing.
So actually, that's perfect timing, Steve. We're coming up to our first break already. Time is flying by. But the realization that we actually are the imaginal cells of humanity and that we need to congregate together in consciousness is a great point to leave off in this first segment. This is Peter Tung for Awakening to Conscious Co-Creation.
Be extraordinary. Seventh Wave Network.
Do you want to reach your highest potential in your personal and business life? Come and join our heart-centered community with Peter Tung and Sherry Chase. Embrace love, abundance, integrity, and personal empowerment in a safe and sacred space for your awakening. Our intention is to lay the groundwork for you to advance your awareness sufficiently to be fully involved in the conscious co-creation of peace and prosperity on our beautiful planet. Go to myheartcenteredjourney.com for more information.